It's from Aleph.
From Aleph to the one.
Yeah.
Aluf. Yeah, so it's a champion first.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so as we approach the Olympics, which is about 2 weeks away? That's if anybody actually finally gets there. They're banning a whole heap have decided they don't want to go, so it could be interesting. And what are they doing it for? A laurel wreath that withers and fades. So as we approach the Olympics, we reflect on the thousands of hours spent in the dark, cold, wet and lonely conditions, running, walking, lifting, swimming, cycling, sailing, as the athletes combat injuries, aching muscles, exhaustion, discouragement, massive expense, serious doubts, but enduring all of it for this tiny window of opportunity every 4 years that tantalizingly offers a single moment of triumph for one, a chance to make history that can alter the whole course of their lives. So what do these elite Alufim and Alufot, these male and female champions, all have in common? 100% commitment, endurance, courage, the capacity to dig deep and find reserves that even they didn't know that were there. And that coupled with the unshakable belief that all things are possible. Why? Because they've set their target beyond their current reach. They never aim for what they can do, they aim for what they can't do. Yet. They always make sure that their current reach exceeds their current grasp. And we should always be doing the same thing. Always reach for something that's just beyond our grasp. Why? Because once you've settled for a goal that you know you can reach, then immediately you limit yourself and you'll never go beyond that mark. And our walk with Abba is exactly the same, but with a couple of important differences. One, he never allows us to be tempted beyond what we can bear. And how does he accomplish that? He always provides a way out that enables us to endure and conquer it. When temptation comes, getting tempted is not a sin. It's what you do about it. I once heard somebody talk about it like a nest on your head. The temptation comes and sits on the nest. That's not the sin. The sin is letting it nest and lay eggs. Two, he's always alongside us in the race. And he's with us as our coach. And he's always encouraging us to take the next step and to go the extra mile. He never limits us by carrying us. So often we turn around and say, I'm tired, carry me. You know you do when you're a child? I've had enough, carry me. That's exactly the time when they need to be made to walk that extra bit further, to produce that strength and that endurance. If you constantly keep picking them up, they'll never achieve anything. He never carries us across the line. Why? Because he knows it would rob us of that sense of achievement that equips us and sets us up for the next challenge. And in fact, if he did that, it would actually feel like a failure and not a victory. Barriers and struggles produce endurance. Endurance produces stamina and character. And character produces a steadfast hope that spurs us on and doesn't let us down when discouragement strikes And if anybody here hasn't felt discouragement, please tell me the secret. Of course we're going to get discouraged. It's what we do about it. And it was in this hope that we've been redeemed, that we were saved. But if we see what we hope for, then it isn't hope anymore after all. Who hopes for what he already sees? As Torah says, if we continue hoping for something that we don't see, then we will still wait eagerly for it with perseverance. And we say, why doesn't he show us more? Why don't we see more? Because if we did, we'd sit down and relax. He purposely keeps us from seeing it, constantly out of our reach, so that we constantly keep persevering and striving for it. As I've said many times, Abba is far more interested in developing my character than my ministry. People say, but what about my ministry? He's more interested in your character than your ministry, because if you don't get the character right, the ministry, when it explodes, and it will explode, doesn't just take you out, it takes thousands of other people who are following you out at the same time. There are people who are sitting back devastated and wounded all around the countries of the world because they put their faith and they put their trust in a person in ministry. They followed a particular ministry and suddenly it's just exploded. And they just get taken out and they're just laying there, they're wounded, they need restoring. Like I say, because without sound character, your ministry is like a ticking time bomb. It will explode and it will cause the maximum damage to not just you, but those all around you. On that basis, we need to let him deal with our past, so that it doesn't define our future. It's like Wayne was just saying, 2 years confessing sins. 2 years, not just about confessing the sins, but him developing their character. Because until he developed their character, he couldn't build anything on it. And often the people that seem to be by the wayside, nothing much is happening in their lives, and you think, oh yeah, but here I am, and I'm in ministry, I'm doing this and that, and they're... Beware, often the bigger the building, the deeper the foundation. It can take a long time for some people to build the foundation, but once he's done it, boy, they will just shoot up. That ministry will be just something that nobody expects. Why? Because they've allowed him to build that foundation, to mould their character, ready so that they can carry as many as possible. So we need to let him deal with our past so that it doesn't define our future. Let's face it, we've all made mistakes. Anybody here hasn't made any mistakes? Didn't think so. All honest people here. That's how we learn. And we'll continue to make mistakes. But fortunately, Abba's provided a permanent way to deal with them. By asking, giving and receiving unconditional forgiveness. As we've said many times before, when we forgive, the person who gets set free is us. It's not about who deserves it, not about whether they deserve it or not. We deserve it. We deserve to cut off that control that thing still exerts over our lives. Because if we leave it and we don't forgive it, it will eat away at us like a cancer. It becomes bitterness, and the bitterness just eats away at us. By not forgiving, we're the person that's being damaged. The person that we haven't forgiven is fine, they're getting on with their lives. Oh, but you don't know what I did, or what they did to me. It's unforgivable. There's no such thing. This says there is no such thing as an unforgivable sin except when it involves certain people and him personally, the Holy Spirit. And so many people are confused about that. That's a whole different teaching on itself. Nobody sitting here has committed the unforgivable sin. Otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here. Really? Is that what the word says? 2 Corinthians 2:7 says, so that now you should do the opposite. Forgive him, encourage him, and comfort him. Otherwise, such a person might be swallowed up in overwhelming depression. So I urge you to show that you really do love him. And Colossians 3:12-15 says, therefore, as Yahweh's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with feelings of compassion and with kindness, humility, gentleness and patience. Bear with one another. If anyone has a complaint against someone else, forgive him. Indeed, just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must forgive. Above all these things, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together perfectly. And let the shalom which comes from the Messiah be your heart's decision maker. One of my favourite lines there. Let the shalom from the Messiah be your heart's decision maker. For this is why you were called to be part of a single body. And be thankful. What that tells me is that these things aren't just there naturally. You have to clothe yourself with them. When you get up in the morning, you think, I can't be bothered clothing myself this morning. You're going to get a shock and everybody else is going to get a shock when you walk out without any clothes on. I don't need clothes. I don't need to do that. I'm too tired this morning. Can't be bothered. We need to clothe ourselves with those things. Every day. We need to put them on like clothes. We need to make a conscious decision to wear them. Clothe yourself with ahava or love, which binds everything together perfectly. Clothe yourself with feelings of compassion and with kindness, with humility, with gentleness and patience. Stick them in your wardrobe. You want a walk-in wardrobe? Put them in it. Every morning, go through your walk-in wardrobe, put them on. And then the last thing that you put on is ahava, the love, which binds all of these things together. It's like they're all the undergarments and the overgarments and every other garment, and then you put ahava on, which is like the overcoat, which binds it all together, keeps it all in place.
We don't have any right to be offended by anyone.
No.
Because in Jesus, he should be an awful lot more offended. Yeah.
So love binds everything together perfectly. And let the shalom which comes from the Messiah, remember he said, what I give you is not as the world gives you, be your heart's decision maker. Don't make a decision unless it's based on that. And in Luke 24:46 he says, the Messiah is to suffer and rise from the dead on the third day. And in his name, repentance leading to forgiveness of sins is to be proclaimed to people from all nations, starting with Jerusalem. I'm sorry, but it says all nations. It doesn't just turn around and say the nice ones. It says all nations. Not a single nation is missed out. Again, we've got to get this mentality out of the way of the difference between people and the things that they do. Who a person is and what they are is totally different from the things that they do. He loves the person, but not the sin. We throw the sin out, not the person. So how many times do we have to forgive? Come on, we're all experts in forgiveness, aren't we? How many times do we have to forgive? 70 times 7. And what does 70 times 7 mean? Infinity. which means there is never a time when we're not to forgive. Never. And those of us with children know how tough that is at times. But again, it's because we separate the fact, I love him, but he's a ratbag today, and I'm not sure I feel like forgiving him. What he does and who he is are two totally separate things. As my wife reminds me when I use this illustration, that I love my son completely, absolutely, no conditions, even if he's an axe murderer. And as my wife always reminds me, I need to let people know, no, he's not. It's just an illustration. For a long time I kept saying that, and I didn't qualify it. He's not, but I'm using it as an illustration. I love him for who he is and what he is, but I often hate his behaviour, no matter what it is. I feel sorry for someone, and I've seen it recently. Some of these guys whose sons have committed absolute atrocities, and the father's come in and you can see he's heartbroken, absolutely heartbroken. He doesn't know how to respond for what his son's done, and he's got that dilemma. I can't come on and say I love him because he's just committed these atrocities. It's a separate issue. We forgive the person, not the sin. And Abba, when I was writing this, turned around and said, tell them, yes, I know you've heard it all before. He was saying, in their minds, this is what sentence going through, yeah, I've heard it all before. And what he told me was to challenge people and say, yeah, but have you put it into practice yet? We know you've all heard it. We've all heard it. The issue is, have we put it into practice? So how's the training regime going? You champions. An athlete doesn't win a contest because they're lucky. What's that thing they say? The more I train, the luckier I get. They don't win a contest because they're lucky. They win it because they are fully physically and mentally prepared, and having endured the setbacks. On the television the other morning, I thought it was interesting, this guy that did the deep sea diving record again, the free diving record, and he was saying he's prepared for it physically, he's prepared for it and everything else, but at the end of it all he said, but the most important thing is, has he prepared for it mentally? He's physically capable of it. You know, everything's in place, but at the end of the day it comes down to the mental and spiritual preparation. Why are they physically and mentally prepared? Because they've endured setbacks, they've endured the injuries, they've endured the discouragements, and it's made them focused and determined to finish. They've endured the times when they've come in 5th and 6th and 7th and 3rd and 2nd, and they keep coming back again and again and again, often against the same people that beat them last time. That can be discouraging. But it makes them focused and determined to finish. A setback is just that. A setback is not a defeat. It's just a setback. A setback is a trigger to dig deeper. To use the occasion as a springboard that will take us higher as an integral part of our lifestyle. Because for us, we've also had to prepare spiritually, and I think I talked about it last week, about the Romanian friend I had that talked about the saying that they had, that we're like nails. The harder we're hit, the deeper we go. And this guy wasn't just talking off the top of his head. When he went into the main prisoner in Bucharest, the guy there turned around and said, have a look out. He said, that's the last time you'll see out there. He said, once those doors close, I'm your God. You'll never see the outside of those gates again. And he constantly spent time with him and tried to indoctrinate him and tried everything else. And every time he did it, he said, you can kill me. He said, but thousands will spring up. And that's what he said to me. He said, the harder you hit, the deeper we go. That was his response. And he said that to this guy. Not just in theory. Very easy to think, oh, isn't that wonderful? But when you're in that situation, it's very different. But the point is, so Terence said, right, the harder that we hit, the deeper we go. But go where? Right into his presence. Because when we do that, he will encourage us to go faster, higher and further again, and to look beyond the current hurdle. And he'll cause us to focus on the bigger picture, the real landscape that's been painted by him. We'll look beyond the things that have been put there as a barrier. He has painted the landscape. He knows all of the steps. He knows what's going to happen. And yes, we are in a race, but it's not a sprint. You know the amount of people you see and they suddenly come on the scene and there's bright spark and they minister here and they minister there, and you look for them again and they're gone. It's like a shooting star. We've all seen them. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And for a marathon we need endurance training. Because marathons require entirely different sets of skills and preparations than sprints. The sprint, the gun goes and you just go for it. It doesn't matter if you die at the end or you fall over, you just go for it. In a marathon you need strategy, you need endurance, you need to come to that point where you hit the wall. And when you hit the wall, that's what sorts out the winners from the losers. It's when you hit the wall that you learn to dig deep and use resources that you didn't even know were there. So it turns the sprint into a steeplechase. A steeplechase requires stamina, endurance, and it's achieved through a carefully prepared game plan involving spiritual awareness, discernment, mental toughness and determination and physical endurance. Will we stumble and fall at times? Of course we will. How many times have you seen in the Olympics somebody on a steeplechase and they try to get over the big wooden thing and they stand on it and they fall flat in the face of the water? Do they just lay there and say, that's it, I give up? They get up and they go again. And they get up and they go again. And not only do they make up the ground, but they surge ahead and they win the race. As Kipling said, we must hold our nerve when all around us are losing theirs. And how many times have we been in that situation where everybody around us is falling apart, and suddenly from somewhere we just get this real calm and peace. And we know it's from Him. He gives us that shalom in the middle of the storm. Because somebody needs to calm the rest of them down and then rally them and get them to move forward again. Psalm 91 tells us, you who live in the shelter of Elion, who spend your nights in the shadow of Shaddai, who say to Yahweh, my refuge, my fortress, my Elohim in whom I trust, He will rescue you from the trap of the hunter and from the plague of calamities. He will cover you with His pinions, and under His wings you will find refuge. His truth is a shield and a protection. You will not fear the terrors of night, or the arrows that fly by day, or the plagues that roam in the dark, or the scourge that wreaks havoc at noon. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not overwhelm you or defeat you. Don't we all look forward to crossing the finishing line? But do we want to just make it, or do we want to win it? Everybody looks forward to crossing the finishing line at the front and hearing those wonderful words. Excellent, you are a good and trustworthy servant. Because you've been faithful with a small amount, so I will put you in charge of a large amount. Come and join in your master's happiness. But the bottom line is, are we prepared to put in the hard yards? Are we willing to put in the unseen, energy-sapping, lonely, and the misunderstood at times, character-building hard yards that will give us the right stuff? Isn't that what they say at NASA? They've got the right stuff. Abba's looking for people who've got the right stuff, but it doesn't come automatically. It takes the unseen, energy-sapping, lonely, being misunderstood at times, character-building hard yards that give us the right stuff. And it's that will lead us to victory. So shalom, mitgoshesh, or athletes, shalom.